In the summer of 1590, an English ship dropped anchor off a wild and wooded island on the far side of the Atlantic. On board was a man named John White, and he had come to find his family. 3 years earlier, he had left more than 100 colonists here, among them his own daughter and his baby granddaughter, the first English child ever born in the New World. But when he came ashore, the settlement was empty. The houses were gone, the people had vanished, and there were no bodies, no graves, no sign of a struggle. There was only a single word carved into a wooden post. This is the story of the Lost Colony of Roanoke. The story began 3 years earlier, in 1587, in the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. England was hungry to gain a foothold in the New World, to challenge the might of Spain, and the adventurer Sir Walter Raleigh had been granted the right to plant a colony on the distant coast of what the English called Virginia. An earlier attempt had already failed, a group of soldiers who fell out badly with the native peoples and abandoned the place. This time was meant to be different. This time they would send families, men, women and children, to build not a fort but a home. More than 100 colonists made the long and dangerous crossing, led by their governor John White, a gentleman and an artist. In July they landed on Roanoke Island, a low sandy wooded island among the shifting waters of the Outer Banks. And there, almost at once, they found themselves in trouble. The land was harder than they had hoped, and their supplies were thin. And the local tribes, remembering the violence of the soldiers who had come before, were wary and in places hostile. One colonist who strayed out alone to catch crabs was found killed. The little colony began to feel less like a new beginning and more like a trap. And yet in the middle of it all, there was a moment of hope. On the 18th of August, White's daughter Eleanor gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Virginia Dare, and she became the first English child ever born on American soil. But the colony could not survive on hope alone. Their situation was growing desperate, and the settlers begged White to sail back to England and return with the food and supplies they needed to last. Reluctantly, he agreed, and before he left, they made a promise to one another. If the colonists were forced to leave Roanoke while he was gone, they would carve their new destination into a tree or a post. And if they left in danger under attack, they would carve above it the shape of a cross. White set sail, expecting to be gone only a few months. He could not have known that he would not set foot on the island again for 3 long years. For no sooner had he reached England than the country was plunged into war. The great Spanish Armada was bearing down on English shores, and Queen Elizabeth ordered every seaworthy ship held back to defend the realm. White was trapped, thousands of miles from his family, unable to return, while the months stretched into years. When at last he sailed back into those waters, in August 1590, it was his granddaughter Virginia's 3rd birthday. He went ashore full of dread and hope, but the settlement he found was deserted. The buildings had been carefully taken down. A tall wooden palisade had been raised around the empty ground, as if against some threat. And on one of its posts, one word had been cut deep into the wood: Croatoan. On a nearby tree, 3 letters: C-R-O. But nowhere on post or tree was there any sign of a cross. To White, that was everything. Croatoan was the name of an island to the south, and of the friendly tribe who lived there, the people of Manteo, a native man who had sailed with the English and become their ally. There was no cross, no distress signal, no sign of violence. It seemed his people had not been slaughtered or dragged away. They had simply gone of their own will to live among friends. His heart must have lifted. All he had to do was sail a little way south to Croatoan, and he would find them. But the sea would not allow it. A fierce storm rose up, and his crew, frightened and near to mutiny, refused to risk the treacherous shallows. White was forced to turn away, so close to his family and yet unable to reach them. He sailed back to England, and he never returned. He died some years later without ever learning what had become of his daughter, his granddaughter, or the colony he had left behind. So what did happen to them? For more than 400 years, people have argued over it. Perhaps they were killed after all. Perhaps they were lost at sea trying to sail home. But the likeliest answer is the one the carved word points to. They went to live among the native peoples, and over the years, they simply became part of them. Long afterwards, English explorers told of meeting native people along that coast with grey eyes, who said their ancestors could talk from a book. And in our own time, archaeologists digging on those islands have turned up English objects, hundreds of years old, far from any known settlement. We may never know for certain. The houses are long gone, the colonists are dust, and the only message they ever left us is that single strange word, cut into a post on an empty island and carried down the centuries: Croatoan.